I'm Zendaya. I am with two amazing, creative, beautiful people that I get to see and work with every single day. And today we get to talk in a weird way because I've never asked you guys questions like this before, so this is cool. I get to ask them questions and talk about these two very special episodes that we had, one of which revolves around Jules and her journey. Okay, so first thing, some of these questions I know the answer to, but I'm gonna ask them anyway because the world doesn't know. Is how did this episode come about? Like, where did the inception of the Jules episode come to be?
Because of COVID and the restrictions that, COVID put on our production in general, actually by postponing our season 2, I wanted to come up with ways where we could all get back to work and still tell, this story, but in a smaller way. So I initially sort of conceived of this diner episode with Rue, and I thought it would be nice to kind of also have a Jules episode that served as sort of a companion piece where we can sort of follow their individual perspectives. And so after writing the diner episode, I started working on the Jules episode, and then I called Hunter, who was I think back home at the time. And, I was just sort of running through some ideas and what I was thinking. And then, Hunter, I almost called you Jules. And then Hunter started kind of talking about, the ocean. And, it was some poem she had written when she was like 16. And I have this weird thing with the ocean as well. And then it just started from there. And at a certain point, I just said, I feel like you're writing dialogue right now. Do you want to just write this thing together? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to. And so we just hung out on the phone and wrote it on the phone.
For like a week, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was also just out of sheer, boredom as well in the pandemic. And we had played around with writing something a little bit before, so
yeah.
We had a little bit of a frequency in that. And then yeah, you just hit me up while I was stewing in North Carolina, and it worked out.
Yeah, it was. And look, I think one of the things that's really exciting is Hunter sort of approaches everything as a visual artist. So it's a very visual language that she has, even with writing, which is something that I connect to very, very much. And so we just kind of would constantly just take one idea and push it further and go back and forth. And then she ended up being involved in all of pre-production, prep, shot listing, storyboarding, and it was just a fucking blast.
It was a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there an initial, because I remember there was a lot of conversation about what the Jules episode could be or was going to be, but I feel like once you guys started talking, it just kind of turned into its own thing.
Yeah, I think that the original idea was just to see Rue and Jules's relationship through Jules's perspective. Because Rue, as much as I love her, is fairly selfish, destructive force, who's often lying about a number of things.
Yeah, not the most reliable narrator.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. And so I thought it would be interesting to sort of explore that dynamic and the pressures that it put on Jules and what led her to basically to run away. And I think around the time that I think we started talking is when there was a kind of a large conversation going on about whether Jules was a villain. Yeah,
on Twitter.
Which I think, angered all of us on the inside.
Yeah.
But it's also, everything's hyperbole.
Yeah, of
but,
course.
But it pointed to something, which was that I think we had, that we could explore this character in a way that was deeper because she wasn't wrapped up in the entire narrative of, 10, 12 characters,
Or her story wasn't being told through Rue's eyes. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it kind of reflected quarantine in a way where it was just her isolated in that space, and then everything that happens inside of your head when you're isolated.
How did it feel for you, I guess, reacting to the first season and then coming into these special episodes where you really had the time to just really make whatever you guys wanted to make?
Yeah.
and it felt like it was separate from the first season, but also tied into the first season and reaction to the first season. So yeah, how did that play into it, if it did at all?
I think the biggest difference I felt was, like, I mean, season 1 was a process of, like, for me, from episode 1 to episode 8, of getting to know Jules and, like, really understanding her. And you know, I mean, I tried as hard as I could to, like, come into the season and into the pilot, like, with a pretty solid idea of who she was, especially talking to you beforehand too. But of course that evolved with every episode and every scene that we filmed. However, that was all, like we said, through Rue's perspective. So in a way, I think I got to know her through Rue's perspective as well, and hadn't spent quite the same time really just with her and, like, fully from her perspective and inside her brain. And the fantasies and the sort of, like, world that she has, or she inhabits in there, you know?
I feel like, you know, I think with like our characters, right? There's a certain part of you that feels like your character, and there's a certain part of you that, like, completely dissociates and is like, I would never do that. I would never say that, or whatever the case may be. So how was it kind of navigating all of a sudden writing words that you knew you were gonna say as someone else, and, like, what felt like you and what felt like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that must have been
Yeah.
kind of trippy.
I mean, I feel like to begin with, the lines even felt a little blurry. And it's also just because this guy taught me how to act. And through Jules. And so that's kind of been my only reference point so far. And the acting kind of fell hand in hand with writing. In season 1, when we were still figuring out who Jules was, I feel like a lot of that is who, especially in the pilot, like, that's who I was at the time, and that's who I was channeling into it. And I've grown, like, I feel like 10 times, whatever that means, since then. And so she feels like a relic in a little bit of a way. But then, like, coming back to her and really honing in on her again in this episode, and then also bringing in, like, aspects of poetry that I wrote when I was, like, 18, which was your idea, and, like, throwing that in there and weaving it in. And it's somehow miraculously working out with, like, the ocean analogies and whatnot. It got a little trippy, I think, just because there were so many pieces that we kind of, like, picked and pulled out and put together for the episode. Does that sound right?
No, totally. I mean, I think that I'm a big fan of, like, blurring the line
Right.
between yourself and a character. I feel like that's how I approach almost all the characters a little bit. And I think the more you put yourself into a character, the more protective you are, the more care you have over them and ownership you have over them. So, you know, you want to get it right. And I think that's that's one of the beautiful aspects of working with Hunter, is she was just willing to dive straight into it and really sort of explore this character's subconscious and hopes and wishes and dreams in a really kind of unafraid way. And I think it taught us all more about the character. I think only by doing it do you learn who the character is more and more. And yeah, it's why I kind of like having no set journey for anybody, and, you know, any character really, and we just sort of shoot
See
an
where they
episode
go.
and see where it goes.
Yeah.
You know,
This episode is one of my favorite episodes of, like, the show, and I remember watching it and just being, like, stressed out. That was, like, the whole time I was just like, because you're kind of so viscerally kind of going through her experience and seeing all the things we never got to see, it was such a special experience. And I guess I remember when we were on set watching her perform, right? And it was like one of the earlier days, and you were doing all the stuff in the therapist's office. And I just remember both of being like, yo, whatever happened, like she's come back and she's come back strong. And I just want to speak to kind of just watching Hunter's growth, I think, in front of the camera and behind the camera, and like just watching you like unlock these levels like has been really cool to experience, right? Like,
yeah, no, I was, to be honest,
like,
I was a little bit nervous how she was going to make the transition from writing to acting in it.
Me too.
And I was
Never
like,
done that before.
and I was like, I don't know, is it like going to be kind of bumpy? Is she going to be like too inside of it, in her head about stuff? And then she just showed up and just knocked it out of the park, and I was like, oh, okay, we're good, we're good.
No, I remember I was just like, yo, like she was, and you just maintain that like all day.
Yeah.
All day. I guess another thing I talk about is kind of like the ability with these in-between episodes to kind of like explore new tones and like ways of shooting the show, because it, to me, I mean, aside from it being film, it also just felt like Euphoria, but it felt not like Euphoria at all, and kind of especially like staying in one place in the therapist's office, but then also going back to the dreamy stuff. And I just think like, you know, kind of maybe you can speak to the freedom of working within Euphoria, but then also creating something that was outside of Euphoria because it was like a special episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what one of the most sort of exciting parts of doing these special episodes is, I mean, I'm not precious about like television and the idea of going back and doing the same thing. I almost have an adverse reaction to it in some senses. So the fact that because we were doing these special episodes and they were, you know, shorter, you know, kind of day count, various things, it just gave us a kind of like a hall pass to just do whatever we wanted to tell the story. And I think it really kind of freed us up to sort of explore a new visual language for the show. And I think taught us some stuff about how we would shoot season 2, but I think I love the idea that the thing that I care the most about are these characters, and I'll sort of follow these characters wherever they go. So the fact that it didn't have to be this sort of rigid structure where we come back and do the same thing each and every episode was just a dream and kind of fun to play with.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also, it doesn't go without saying that like this was a miracle in the fact that it happened in the thick of the pandemic, and that in some ways influenced like what we wrote and how we wrote it, particularly also with like the prerequisite of the Rue episode, which happens like entirely in one space with like mostly just Rue and Ali, and like that structure being like so beautiful. That's one of my favorite episodes of like the whole show, and like sort of like using that as a base for the episode, but then I think also with us writing together, our brains kind of it gets very, very easy to escape into like psychological realms that aren't like
grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it allowed for sort of an abstraction and a playfulness. I remember even when shooting it, it was like we shot for a whole day, and then we were like, I don't know, should we try something different? And then we were sort of experimenting with, sort of high-speed cameras and various things, and it just, there was a freedom that we had to kind of just enter her soul and see the world through it that had, there weren't any sort of boundaries to it.
Right.
It was like really intense summer camp.
Yeah.
Right. I remember all of us like being worried that it was going to be like so devastating. Like the whole thing was just going to be.
I was worried about that.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it is, but it like, I think it's okay that way because it kind of needs to be.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad story a little bit, It has its beautiful moments, but their relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but that's I think you could call the episode in a way a bit of a tragedy.
Right.
However, I think that's also sort of the formula of the show a little bit too, in that a lot of kind of tragic shit is going down. However, there is a continuous like thread of hope that like lingers throughout the entire series and gives you just enough to hold on to, which I feel like is kind of how life, particularly the lives that these characters are living goes, you know, as far as like, you know, dealing with a lot of shit, but there's something that's keeping you moving. Yeah. Everyone's life. Yeah.
It's like sucks, but then there's a little bit of hope to like, I think another really important thing that I saw you guys like really figure out as you went, and I watched you guys kind of go back and forth, that was music, and like how music plays into the emotion of the episode, and when it should be, when it shouldn't be, where it should be silent, where it should be this, and then switching out songs and then becoming obsessed with a particular song and then switching things out. So like talk about, I don't know, how music influenced
you put me on
this.
So much stuff.
Yeah, well, we have a thing. It's most of the time Hunter and I just communicate by she just sends me songs, I send her songs, and then I also too when I write, I always have to like listen to one thing over and over because it's sort of the rhythm of it. But it was interesting because I didn't necessarily see I thought that the therapist stuff would just play spare without anything, and then as we were in editorial, I don't know what happened, but we were just sort of messing around and, you know, started playing Arvo parts, Stabat Mater, and then that kind of took on this whole other shape to it. And then Hunter had reached out to Arca to do the kind of what we call the Jules Fantasia section, which was a dream.
Idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just sort of, I don't know, we, a lot of it sort of just unveiled itself.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny because before we started filming or even got into editing or anything like that, we were in this huge like 90s spiral with like Pulp and like
Radiohead.
Yeah.
It was weird. Yeah.
And then
I remember that on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then somehow it turned into like
something
Arvo Part thing, and then the opera, and then like
that
Billy and Rosa came in with that song, and then we got in contact with Lord, and then I hit up Arca, and then it just morphed, and then Julio did his magic.
Did his thing,
and it.
Didn't you have that song, the Billy and Rosa song, for a while?
Yeah, we had the Billy Rosalia song for a while, and then they weren't going to release it, and then we got it again because that's actually what changed how we shot like a full day of things, because I started listening to that song, and then I was playing it on set, and then we all became obsessed with it. Yeah, it's a whole
playing
thing.
It for everything.
It was fun because we got to just sort of, we were writing we wrote the script, but then we would also just kind of rewrite things in the moment.
Even the last scene of the episode.
Yeah.
We rewrote that on the spot, like the three of us, kind of.
Yeah.
Like we just kind of.
Because it was originally a scene from season 2, and it was a much longer.
Weird.
And it was weird.
Yeah.
It was, we got there, and I remember you guys rehearsing. I was like, "That's the fucking scene, really?" You know.
And then we just
dismantled it. Yeah.
And I love that scene.
Yeah.
And it was simpler than like, you know, like sometimes less is more.
And it was like a 2-page thing.
Yeah. It's like, get rid of the words and they just don't know what to say to each other.
Yeah. But I love that scene.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites from the episode.
It was a heartbreaking moment. We have like 10 minutes left, so I'm trying to think of good things to ask in the 10 minutes. One, I will ask about the eyeball shot, because, I mean, guys, I love that shot. I think it's gorgeous. And it's just like, how the hell? A lot of people don't know that it's like practical.
Yeah.
That she sat there like this.
Yeah, with her chin on like in like a metal strap, so she didn't move a millimeter.
And then you got a tear in there.
Well, that's what was amazing. Well,
like,
we got a giant projector and a screen, and we placed her eye where we placed her head there, and then she just watched like a 2-minute cut of last season
Which was trippy in itself.
as we put a lens right up to her eyeball and filmed the reflection of it. And then what was amazing is she was somehow able to get emotional and cry during that.
Well, you know, you look back at all these beautiful little moments of last season and you get into character, and that like it makes sense, you know.
Because I forget what was there originally, but that was sort of an idea that we had.
Yeah.
A while ago.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like.
it was a montage initially, I think.
And then it became.
And then I think we watched like 3 Colors Blue or something.
Yeah.
And
we were
that
wondering
eyeball
how,
shot was crazy.
Yeah, and we were wondering how we could just sort of
Do the
catch
whole
the
thing.
audience up in some way,
Right.
while also.
Setting up some
and then
context.
Lord
Yeah.
came through with the songs,
Yeah.
and it matched up perfectly.
Yeah.
Melodrama matched up perfectly with it, which was also magic.
Yeah.
And
But that's a single take.
So crazy.
That was the first take.
of your eyeball.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
wild.
And then I guess my final question would be like a happy question of like, what are you most proud of about this episode?
Oh, you go first.
Should I start?
Yeah, you go first.
I mean, I don't think I can confidently say that I don't think I have ever felt more subsumed in making a project ever than with this episode, and with like people that I trust and love so deeply, and it was like safe, and in that sense it felt so safe to explore, which is why I think it was so fun on the first hand, but also why I felt able, at least from my end, to get as vulnerable as I needed to be, and as vulnerable as you felt the episode should be, and ultimately, in defense of Jules, I think we made a very good case as to why she is not a fucking villain. And also, I mean, I tried to avoid talking about it just because I don't like to center it in most of the conversations I have around this stuff. But just as a trans girl, it means the world to me to create like an episode on a mainstream television show that really goes in depth into the psychology of like a young trans girl on a level that at least feels very real to me, and something I don't know if it's like arrogant or weird to say, but like I wish I had this episode when I was like in high school and, you know, first moving into transitioning and just not knowing who you are or where you fit into the world. It's really confusing, and like in that point in life you are like desperately searching for something to align yourself with, and I feel like I hope that's what it's been for other folks like me at that age or something like that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, emo.
Good luck, Sam.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to follow that
Yeah.
one. I think what I'm most proud of is that, I don't know, just being able to work with people that I am so creatively inspired by, and that there's this back and forth, and it's the best idea wins. And it's really hard to, I don't know, to find that kind of true collaborative spirit. And just working with Hunter on it was just, I don't know, just one of the greatest gifts, because it allowed for us to just fall into this rabbit hole of this character. And the fact that we could even do it with this show was just really, really beautiful. And I think the specificity of of this girl and what she's going through, just, I don't know, it just, it strikes a chord in me. And I don't know, I'm really proud of the whole fucking thing. I'm proud of the work we all did. You know, and I'm proud of the fucking work that Hunter did. It's really astounding. You know, so that's not nearly as eloquent as your previous answer, but it's true though.
I'm really fucking proud of it.
Yeah, it's hard to find people that you can trust with your creativity, and I sure as shit trust Hunter. You know?
You too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone who was watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.